This building carries his family name in gold letters above the entrance, 40 stories of glass and steel rising over the city skyline. And yet at 2 in the morning, the man mopping its marble lobby floor is wearing a gray hoodie with the hood pulled low, earning $16 an hour to clean a building he could, by rights, walk into tomorrow and own outright. His name is Ethan Whitfield. Though tonight, and for 6 weeks before it, nobody in this building knows that. They know him as Ethan Cole, the quiet new hire on the night cleaning crew who never complains and never asks for help. He is doing this, all of it, the exhaustion, the aching back, the $12 instant noodles, for one reason. Because the woman he is about to fall in love with would never once look twice at the man his mother is grooming him to become. Before we go further into this story, we want to know where you are watching from tonight. Drop your city in the comments. We would love to hear from you. And if you have not already, hit that subscribe button so you never miss one of our upcoming videos. Her name is Maya Torres, and she has no idea who is standing next to her every night, pushing the same cart, wiping down the same glass doors. She only knows that he listens when she talks, that he remembers small details about her life that most people forget the moment they hear them, and that for 6 weeks, he has felt like the one honest thing in a building full of people pretending to be something they are not. What she does not know yet is that the man beside her is the son of the woman who destroyed her father. What she does not know yet is that inside a manila folder locked in her bag at this very moment sits proof of a 15-year-old betrayal, and that the closer she gets to the truth, the closer she gets to him. By the time she finds out exactly who Ethan Cole really is, it will not simply be his secret unraveling in front of her. It will be everything she believed about trust, about love, and about her own father's disappearance from a story he helped build with his bare hands. Somewhere above them, 38 floors up, in an office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city, a woman named Diane Whitfield sits behind a desk that cost more than most people's homes, utterly unaware that the two people she is about to lose control of are standing in her own lobby right now, one holding a mop, the other holding the answer to a question she has spent 15 years making sure nobody ever asked out loud. To understand how a billionaire's son ends up mopping his own family's lobby floor at 2 in the morning, you have to go back 15 years, long before the glass tower, long before the name Whitfield meant anything to anyone outside of one small industrial warehouse on the edge of town. Back then, there were 2 names on the paperwork, not one. Diane Whitfield and a man named Robert Torres built the company together from nothing, working 18-hour days out of a converted garage, splitting every risk and every reward straight down the middle. Robert was the one who insisted on doing things the right way even when the right way cost money they did not have. Diane was the one who learned, slowly, and then all at once, that the right way was negotiable when the survival of everything she had built was on the line. The company's first major contract nearly collapsed the entire operation before it began. A shortcut in the manufacturing process, one that Diane approved under pressure and never told Robert about until it was already in motion, put workers at risk on the production floor. When an incident nearly turned catastrophic, Robert wanted to report it, wanted to do the right thing, even if it meant losing the contract that was keeping their small company alive. Diane wanted it buried. What followed was not a shouting match or a dramatic betrayal captured on camera. It was quieter than that and far more effective. A severance agreement, a confidentiality clause, a buyout large enough to keep a young family comfortable, and small enough to keep Robert Torres from ever having the leverage to speak publicly again. Within a year, his name had been quietly removed from every founding document, every anniversary press release, every retrospective article the company ever published about its own origin story. Robert Torres took the money because he had a wife and a young daughter to protect, and because fighting a company with more lawyers than he had dollars felt, at the time, like a battle he could not win without losing everything else in the process. That daughter, Maya, grew up watching her father's health decline slowly, under the weight of a secret he never fully explained to her, watching her mother work 2 jobs to make ends meet, watching the company that once bore her father's name grow into an empire that never once mentioned him. She grew up believing her father simply failed at something, that he had not been good enough to keep his place at the table. It would take her 27 years to learn the truth, and she would end up finding the first piece of it while pushing a cleaning cart down a hallway on the 40th floor of the very building her father helped build. Ethan Whitfield grew up on the opposite side of that same story, raised in a home that told him his mother built an empire entirely on her own, through grit and brilliance and nothing else. He grew up surrounded by comfort he never had to question, groomed from childhood to eventually take over an empire he never asked to inherit. What Ethan noticed, even as a boy, was that certain parts of his mother's story always felt rehearsed, polished a little too carefully, told a little too smoothly for something that was supposed to be simple truth. He never had proof that anything was wrong. He only had a feeling that followed him into adulthood, a quiet suspicion that the man he was expected to become was built on a foundation nobody had ever let him fully see. The moment that pushed Ethan into that lobby wearing a stranger's name came on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon in a boardroom on the top floor, when his mother informed him, calmly and without asking, that she had begun arranging a marriage between him and Priscilla Hale, daughter of a rival industrial family, framing it as a merger that would secure the company's future for another generation. Ethan sat across from his mother and realized, perhaps for the first time in his adult life, that he had never once been asked what he actually wanted, not about the company, not about his future, and certainly not about who he might choose to love. He left that meeting with a decision already forming in his mind, one that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with disappearing long enough to figure out who he actually was underneath the name everyone kept using to define him. His mother had recently approved, almost carelessly, a small documentary project meant to showcase the company's frontline workers for public relations purposes. Ethan used it as his opening. He asked to be placed anonymously on the night cleaning crew under a different name, framing it to his mother as research, immersion, a chance to understand the company from the ground floor up before he took it over. Diane agreed, mostly because she was too consumed with the merger to think carefully about what her son might actually be doing with 6 unsupervised weeks and a false identity inside her own building. She had no reason to suspect that her son would end up standing 3 feet away every single night from the daughter of the one person she had spent 15 years trying to erase. Ethan's first night on the crew nearly broke him. He had never operated an industrial floor buffer in his life, had never scrubbed a bathroom or hauled a bag of trash heavier than his own gym bag, and by midnight his hands were raw and his pride was thoroughly dismantled. Maya Torres, assigned to train him, made no attempt to hide her irritation with the clumsy new hire slowing down her already exhausting shift. She had no patience for softness, not after years of working 2 jobs while raising her younger brother and watching her father's health quietly deteriorate. But over the following nights, something began to shift between them, slowly and without either of them fully naming it. Ethan proved, night after night, that he showed up, that he worked hard, that he listened when she spoke, instead of waiting for his turn to talk. Maya began to trust him in small, careful increments, never once suspecting that every conversation they shared was built on top of a lie he told her by omission every single time he opened his mouth. There was one night, roughly 3 weeks in, when Ethan nearly lost everything before it had even truly begun. A senior executive stepped off the elevator on the ground floor late in the evening, someone who had known Ethan since childhood, someone who very likely would have recognized him instantly under different lighting and a little more attention. Ethan ducked into a stairwell just as the man passed, heart pounding against his ribs, understanding in that single frozen moment exactly how thin the wall separating his 2 lives had become. 3 seconds, maybe less, stood between the life he was quietly building with Maya and the collapse of the entire disguise. He did not tell her how close it had come. He simply returned to his cart and kept working, carrying the secret a little heavier than before. While Ethan focused on maintaining his disguise, Maya was quietly building something of her own. During slow stretches of her shift, She had begun slipping into the archived records room on the 32nd floor, photographing old internal memos and financial documents on her phone, piecing together a picture her father had never fully explained to her while he was still healthy enough to speak clearly about the past. She found an internal memo dated 15 years earlier, referencing an approved manufacturing shortcut and a subsequent safety concern, signed off by a single initial, the letter E, a detail that led her, for a short while, to suspect a mid-level executive named Holloway who had been with the company for decades and seemed to fit the profile of someone with something to hide. It was a second document, found weeks later tucked behind a filing cabinet that had clearly not been opened in years, that changed everything. A severance agreement, her father's signature on one line, and beside it, unmistakably, the signature of Diane Whitfield herself, dated the same week her father vanished from the company's official history. Maya sat alone in that records room at nearly 3 a.m, staring at a name she had heard 1,000 times in press releases and magazine profiles, finally understanding that the woman being celebrated as a self-made visionary had built at least part of her legacy on the silence she purchased from Maya's father. Maya needed one final piece of evidence to complete the picture, something locked away in the executive archive on the top floor, an area the cleaning crew rarely had reason to access. She turned to the one person on the crew she trusted completely, the quiet, steady new hire who had never once given her a reason to doubt him. She asked Ethan Cole for help getting into a section of the building she had no legitimate reason to enter, and Ethan, without asking a single question about why, agreed almost immediately, because by that point, he trusted her more than he had trusted almost anyone else in his life. He said yes before he understood what he was actually agreeing to. By the time he did understand, it was already far too late to take the answer back. The night they finally accessed the executive archive together, Ethan realized, standing beside Maya, under the glow of her phone's flashlight, exactly whose history she was trying to expose. He recognized his mother's handwriting on the very documents Maya had spent weeks searching for. He recognized the shape of the story before Maya had even finished laying it out loud, because he had spent his entire life sensing the outline of a secret without ever seeing its full shape until this exact moment. He stood frozen between two impossible choices: protect the mother who raised him, or protect the truth belonging to the woman he had fallen in love with, under a name that was never really his own. It was an old company organizational chart, one Maya had pulled almost as an afterthought, that finally revealed what neither of them had been ready for. His full name, printed plainly beside his mother's, listed as heir apparent to Whitfield Industries. Maya read it twice before the meaning fully landed, and when it did, something in her expression broke in a way Ethan had never seen before and would never forget. She looked at him not as Ethan Cole, the man she had spent 6 weeks growing to trust, but as the son of the woman who had quietly destroyed her father's name and, by extension, a significant portion of her family's life. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was quieter than he expected, and somehow that made it worse. She asked him plainly whether he had known the entire time, whether every conversation between them had simply been another performance layered on top of an already elaborate lie. Ethan did not defend himself. He could not. Not honestly, because the truth was exactly as damning as it looked. He told her everything from the beginning: the arranged marriage he was avoiding, the false name, the 6 weeks of hiding in plain sight, and the slow, unplanned way he had actually fallen for her, somewhere in the middle of all of it, without ever intending to. Maya did not respond with rage, though she had every right to. She responded with a kind of exhausted grief. The sense that even the one seemingly honest thing in her life had turned out to be built on the same kind of quiet deception that had cost her father everything he built with his own hands. Ethan spent the following 2 days deciding who he actually wanted to be, separate from the name printed on the building, and separate from the comfortable silence his family had maintained for 15 years. He walked into his mother's office. The documents Maya had gathered now spread across his own hands rather than hidden behind a filing cabinet, and for the first time in his adult life, he did not ask his mother for permission. He told her plainly what he knew, what he had seen, and what he intended to do about it, regardless of what it might cost, the family name she had spent her entire life protecting. Diane Whitfield sat behind her desk, the same desk from which she had arranged a marriage for her son without asking his opinion, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she said nothing in her own defense. What changed her mind was not the threat of exposure, though that certainly played its part. It was watching her son stand in front of her, steady and unflinching, choosing honesty over comfort in a way she had never once modeled for him growing up. Within weeks, Whitfield Industries issued a quiet but unmistakable public correction to its own history, formally acknowledging Robert Torres as co-founder and settling, at last, what should have been settled 15 years earlier. It was not a grand theatrical apology broadcast across every news outlet in the country. It was simply the truth, finally allowed to exist in daylight after being buried for so long underground. Maya did not forgive Ethan immediately, and the story does not pretend that trust rebuilds itself the moment a lie is corrected. But in the weeks that followed, Ethan showed up, not as an heir trying to buy his way back into her good graces, but as himself, consistently, without hiding behind another name. He returned, more than once, to that same lobby floor where it all began, and it was there, months later, that Maya finally agreed to see him again, not as Ethan Cole the cleaner, and not as Ethan Whitfield the heir, but simply as a man who had proven, slowly and imperfectly, that he was willing to be honest, even when honesty cost him everything he had been raised to protect. He spent 6 weeks pretending to be someone else in order to figure out exactly who he actually wanted to become. And in the end, the only woman worth marrying was the one who had never once cared what name he carried. Every family carries a name that got quietly erased from its story somewhere along the way, and most of us will never know the full truth behind it. If a secret like this existed inside your own family, would you want it uncovered, even if the truth cost your family its reputation? Let us know in the comments below. And if this story moved you the way we hope it did, do not forget to subscribe, because we have more true-to-life stories about money, family, and the truths people spend a lifetime trying to bury.